Welcome to the Cookbook, where we invite guests on to share the ingredients of what has helped make them the successes that they are. All of it, the good, the not so good. You're not going to find anything half-baked here. And our kitchen gets messy sometimes. That's when the fun starts. So come on and join us. Okay, so hey, there are times when we all could use a little extra help and support in our lives. Whether there's something you're struggling with or just seeking connection with other people who understand what it's like to be in your situation, Inovia Behavioral Health can help. Inovia is a subscription-based organization that provides unlimited access to a wide variety of educational, experiential, and therapeutic support groups that are led by live expert facilitators. Now, you can get 20% off your membership with the discount code Cookbook20 when you subscribe. Check it out today at inoviabh.com. Inovia, feel better. Hey everybody, and welcome to the Cookbook. I'm your host, Iris Goldfeder, and I'm excited for our guest today. We've already spoken to him once, Lucas Catton. He is the CEO and founder of Inovia Behavioral Health, who happens to be our sponsor. So I'm going to read his bio and bring him on. Okay. Lucas Catton has worked in the behavioral health field for more than 2 decades with facilities and group practices around the country. He has helped establish and grow multiple programs and has served as a consultant and strategic advisor for many others. His vision to create affordable, accessible help to assist everyday people lead happier, healthier lives continues to shape the future of Inovia Behavioral Health. So without further ado, let's bring on Luke. Hey.
Hey, Iris, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm hanging in there overall.
Well, that's good. So last time you were here, we kind of touched on what Inovia did. And apparently, I guess when we were doing certain interviews, I would try to, because we have like your ad in the beginning and then your ad at the end. And I was trying to promote in the middle, and Kofi was like, stop. You're making a mess of it. Because I would like read, the different programs that you had. And so, but since you've been on, I guess Inovia's gone through a lot of changes.
Yes, it's been pretty crazy in a good way. In a good way, it's one of the things that we started out to do from the beginning was to work with people and walk with people through life, through their experiences in life, and how can we provide support. So the best way to describe that is that we're a subscription-based prevention and maintenance organization. We provide unlimited access to a wide variety of educational and experiential and therapeutic support groups that are applicable to people's everyday lives. And they fall into 3 main categories. There are health and wellness, there are mental health and recovery, and there are work and personal relationships. And so these things are things that we all deal with and that we all have a need for at some time in our lives, either through ourselves or through relating through a loved one or coworker or family member that are experiencing one of these things. And how can we get the help and support that we need in times that we're maybe not doing great, and times where things are really fantastic, but we still want to continue to improve and connect with other people doing a similar experience in life.
And so where you were last time, I know that we talked about, the different classes and all of this, but now you said that you're going through changes. So what are some of the changes that y'all are going through?
Absolutely. Well, one of the really exciting things for us is that something that we've been planning for from the beginning, but we had to get to a certain point before we could do that, and that's to be able to work with adolescents. And the mental health struggles of our young people in throughout the country have been really exacerbated through everything happening with pandemic, where kids were stunted in their growth and their socialization and their isolation and loneliness and lots of different things, and not sure how and where they fit in life and how to be able to get this extra support in a non-clinical way. And finally, we're able to make our adolescent platform available starting July 24th is when we officially kick that off. So depending on when this airs, that's our introduction to be able to providing this help in between all those times where they might be needing help outside of class or outside of time with their their parents or guardians, or outside of time with their therapists, if that's who they see, or other counselors, et cetera. And how can they connect with each other as well in a safe, supportive environment? And so that's really, really an exciting thing that we've been wanting to do from the very beginning, and are finally able to start doing that. And in celebration of that, we're actually giving away a free parental and or guardian membership to our adult side of things, where many of the groups may interact, and you can connect up with facilitators that are working with adolescents and working with adults as well. And wanting to make sure that we're getting support from both ends, because any type of issue or struggle or celebration in life isn't just a single person event. It's something that's experienced and should be experienced amongst others as well. So we want to be able to provide that support on both ends, so for our nation's young people as well as our parents and guardians.
Right. And right now, the focus is so heavy on adolescents, especially because of the summer, right? Because during the school year, if they're in a lower income household, basically their meals are provided for them depending on what state they live in. It's another story. I don't want to get into all that shit, but I mean, it's true, right? I mean, if they're in the wrong state, they're fighting about feeding, these kids. But during the summer especially, and they're not in school, there's this food deficiency, right? They don't have access to 3 meals a day, depending on their home situation and all of that. And we do a podcast for our local Mental Health America, and Brent Christensen is the CEO, and she had on the assistant superintendent of our school corporation here. Yeah. And one of the things they were focusing on was, kids, and about, how to get them meals, how to get them active during the summer. Because you're right, during the pandemic, kids were stuck at home. They were frustrated. I mean, some did well, some did not. So, and I don't know. I don't know the solution for all of it, but having some kind of a resource where they can come and, I don't know, maybe spend some time. Like, how does your resource work for them? So if there's a kid that's, stuck at home because, like we said, COVID, they were stuck at home, and all of, it caused a lot of, I guess you're right, stunted growth. I never even thought of it that way. But technically you're right, because they couldn't socialize. So now that they're out and about and doing all that stuff, how does this help them? Sure,
yeah, that's a great question. For one thing, there's a great report that came from the U.S. Surgeon General recently called the Epidemic of Loneliness and Isolation. And that's addressing what also happened in the previous 3 years. And it's playing out from young and old alike of, we also have a lot of these work from home environments, and people are, hybrid is fantastic. I love it. And virtual work is fantastic. I love it. And our service is virtually accessible for anyone, which is perfect, and I love it. But there also has to be a sense of connection that goes along with that.
Yes.
And what happens is a lot of our young people were then turned to their devices and started spending time, and still do. I mean, this is an ongoing thing anyway. But they're connecting with unhealthy ways or unhealthy influences through technology, of either a false sense of what happiness looks like, or a comparison issue where they think that everybody is, going to be ripped and beautiful, or that everybody has tons of money but not them, or that everybody has this beautiful relationship except for them, or all these other comparison issues. And instead of then feeling worse about themselves, now they're actually able to connect up with other people and go, oh, you too? I'm not the only one who feels that way. I'm not crazy. I'm not alone. I'm not all these things. They feel a sense of belonging. They feel some reassurance. They feel like they have a way to be able to access positive digital influence in a live format, as opposed to only pre-recorded content or scrolling through YouTube. There's lots of great pre-recorded videos, obviously, and interviews, and things like that. But when you do it in a live setting, and you're able to not only learn in a group from what somebody else is bringing to that group, but also have other peers in your group who might have other resources or solutions to similar things that you're dealing with or experiencing or looking for help with. Then you can do that in a way that is not just a one-way thing where you're pushing play and then hoping to get everything from that one recording. This is an interactive environment where it's much more inclusive. So that is really the biggest difference that we're able to provide people. And from an accessibility standpoint, another huge change that we had gone through just since the last time we talked is our delivery method in our platform. Our services are now available on any type of web-connected device. So it doesn't have to go through, previously you had to download an app in order to go through this portal, in order to go through this thing. Now, whether it's a phone, tablet, computer, smart TV, like however you can be internet connected, you can log in and join our groups. And
Nice.
that was a big thing for us too.
That's awesome. And I mean, it's great for kids, but what you're describing, adults go through.
Yeah.
I mean, right? Like I think everybody goes through that. And it's an important resource. And, somebody that I know, I'm not going to say who, but somebody that I know is, recently her husband asked for divorce. She kind of knew that it was coming, but she's been emotionally abused by him for years.
Mm-hmm.
I got to be really careful on what I say, but anyway, but the kids and her, it was like the three of them, and they were finally getting to this really healthy place after COVID, like where they went for counseling, they did all the things, and they were starting to be like this cohesive unit. And then he drops the bomb that he wants a divorce, and he already has a different house. He sees the kids now more than he did in like the last 2 years, because his job requires that he's not home a lot. And now she's like, her daughter is shot. She doesn't know how, because she's torn, because she likes being with her dad, but her and her mom were so close all this time. And then the son is very protective of the mom. And is like, dad's a dick and whatever, and I'm just going to take care of you and stay here. I'm going to be talking to them about this, that there's this resource that I know, because it's so important for people, like you said, to realize they are not the only ones going through it.
Right.
Because I think that anytime any of us are going through anything, we feel alone.
Yeah.
You can be in the house with somebody, but they don't know what you're necessarily going through, and they don't know necessarily how to support you, because they're not going through the same thing that you're going through, right?
Exactly.
And I love that. I love that this is such an important resource.
Absolutely. I just on the meeting I had just before this, we started out, the person had relocated to a new state. I asked, what brought you to that new state? And it started out with divorce. And so we immediately jumped into that. And that's like, we have a divorce support group, for example. So not only can we help with personal relationships, including family changes in environment for the kids through the adolescent platform, but also in the case of divorce, we have a divorce support group for the parents. We have relational support, whether it's work or interpersonal relations. Otherwise, another group on the adult platform as well. So it's like we can address these topics from both sides in an appropriate manner with other people that are either currently experiencing it or recently experienced it, and that are there to also lend support for other people to know that, like you said, they're not the only ones, and that even though their situation may feel unique, it's other people have gone through this too, and you can learn a lot and really draw a lot of strength from that as well.
So does your program have anything for like entrepreneurs, people who are entrepreneurs that may be going through stuff, like entrepreneur specific? Because I'm wondering if that's, something that, because obviously this is about entrepreneurship, right? And we go through a lot of shit. Like I did a launch. This is like so crazy. I'm doing a challenge at the end of the month. And I paid for this quiz to be done. I'm not going to talk about the money, but I paid for a quiz to be done. And the quiz basically kind of pairs down who belongs in the challenge, right? Because if you have all this knowledge, you don't need to be in the challenge. And I don't want people in the challenge to throw their money away.
Right.
To me, if they're curious and they want to see what it's like, I'm fine with that. But if they're joining, for the wrong reasons, I don't want that. That's not why I'm in business, right? I want to help people. So, so I went through 3 weeks ago, like a meltdown, because I was like, oh my God, I'm scaling. Holy shit, I'm scaling, right? Oh my God, I need a CRM. Oh my God, I need a payment system that's not QuickBooks. Sorry, QuickBooks. And like, I need these things because of this challenge. And I never would have known if I didn't do this challenge, like the things that I needed to put in place. I have a very strong network, a very strong support network. I'm in the group, the Dames that we talked about, and we're all female entrepreneurs. And so I have an avenue, because I was like, whatever. And like, it takes a village. I had a village to help me figure everything out. But for people who may not be in that kind of a networking group or don't have that kind of support, is that something that you would ever think of putting up? Or is there one already that's there?
Yeah, totally. So we actually have one that I personally host. It's called the Professionals Roundtable. And that's what we do. We take a look at all these work-related things, and we help each other find resources and present, maybe similar to like a mastermind type thing, where you present an issue that you're currently dealing with. Do other people, have you gone through this in your business? How do you address it, or how have you solved it in the past? What kind of resources are available? But also, how does that translate in our personal lives as well? Like there are things as entrepreneurs and as founders and other business owners and professionals in lots of different ways. You don't necessarily have to be an entrepreneur to experience many of these things. But how do you balance these things out sometimes? Because oftentimes there may not be such a thing as a perfect balance, but you can address them in different ways. And so it really is about that, about blending that personal and work relationship to the point where you're expanding in both, or growing in both, and really solving a lot in your business specifically.
See, that's awesome. And it's funny because, you talk about how it affects your personal life. I haven't worked weekends on purpose for the last 8 months. During the start of this launch, I was working till 11, 12 o'clock at night, every single night on the weekends. My wife was like, what the hell? Yeah. And I'm like, I got to do this. And it was funny because, a couple of years ago, I was doing this, but not for me, for somebody else, as we know. And I was working just as hard, but this had like a whole different flavor to it. This was like, oh, this is like my baby. Shit. I gotta like really, do this thing. And it put it in a whole different perspective of, like I'm not a new entrepreneur, but because it's a new launch, it's almost like you're back to the beginning, right? You're starting, you're figuring this stuff out. You're figuring the beginning of your business out. You're figuring out what processes do I need. In the beginning, you really don't think of processes and systems. You're just like, okay, I'm doing whatever. Yeah. But then all of a sudden, there's processes and systems. So it's like literally starting over. And it was very humbling. And the other guy and I are in a pretty decent place, I think, now. And I was going to text him and be like, yeah, dude, I kind of get it now. I'm not ready to do it, but I'm probably going to do it soon because, I get it. It's a lot. It's definitely a lot. So if people go to Inovia BH subscriptions, right? And then if they do Cookbook 20, they'll get 20% off.
That's right.
And this is for like everybody and anybody, whatever you're going through, be it personal, professional. I love the adolescent thing. I think that is, so I don't have kids, but they're our future. Yeah. And at the end of the day, we don't want to bunch of fucked up kids running, the world. Like we want well-rounded, kids that have had the support and the help, and they can have the empathy and understand, what it's like, I think, because I think that if people don't get empathy, they don't understand empathy.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, one of the things about support groups and support networks, for example, is that they don't have some other kind of agenda in mind. So, if you go to someone else close to you, typically for advice, oftentimes they're going to give you advice based on some portion of your past that they think you might make the same error or mistake or judgment again, and not, or they might go, well, this is what I really want for you because of this reason, because they've got their own personal, reasoning for that. But when you go into this, people are literally just there because they're wanting to share, and they don't have to know all about your past. They don't have to know about all these other things. It is purely from a sense of again, of connection and help, and it doesn't have that other tint, if you will,
Right. And but I think that, and I'm a true believer in this, that we go through stuff so somebody else doesn't have to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that when I look at, my friend and I were talking about this last week, we both kind of had it rough, growing up and everything, and trauma and, all the things. But at the end of the day, when I look back on it and I look at the people that I was able to help because of that, because I had that understanding of, what it's like to go through something, or you see somebody going towards that cliff.
Mm-hmm.
This happened a couple of months ago. I was watching it and I was like, oh my God, stop. You need to stop what you're doing, because if you go a little further, there's a cliff and you're going to go over it, because I did it.
Yeah.
So please, listen to me. And now I got this, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I probably went through it so that you don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
Please, please, please don't do it. I know what I'm doing. I got this. And thank God, like right before she got to the cliff, she kind of thought about it and called me up and said, okay, so what happened exactly? And I told her exactly what happened. And she was like, you didn't say that in the beginning. I was like, I didn't even know how, because I was so scared. I was so scared because, it was just one of those, I'm not going to say mistakes, but one of those lessons that was very costly,
yeah.
Professionally as well as personally. And I was just like, please, for the love of God, listen to me, and she did. And I'm being general because, on purpose. But I think that at the end of the day, we all go through stuff. Like you've gone through stuff, and that's probably why you started Innovia.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And there's and times where I've needed that other help, like you're talking about, that might not be that. It could be, it said we have these 3 buckets for a reason. It's not always just at times where we're struggling or we need a lot of support because things are difficult. It could be when things are going really well and we want the type of advice and suggestions and guidance and that kind of thing. And so whether it's health and wellness or work and family relationships or lots of other things, there's so many different ways to do that. But there were definitely been times in my life, and this is part of where it came from, not only being like in the field for a long time, but where I know, okay, the people who helped me most through this time or this issue or this thing were other people who had that same or similar experience, right. More so than some expert in a one-on-one setting who, not to detract from that at all, because we are not in competition with anyone in that. Because for people who need formalized therapy or treatment or diagnosis or anything like that, there's professionals for that. We do have professionals capable of doing that, but that's not our role or position. They may do that in their own private practice or in their own business, that kind of thing, but they're part of this because they enjoy the interaction, connectivity, the education piece, and being able to give and believe in this mission, as opposed to thinking that people can only receive help in these other settings. And we know that there's a lot of people who wouldn't ever get help if they didn't have something like this in between, because either they're not going to go receive some type of treatment, or they're not going to get diagnosed, or they're not going to go talk to somebody, or they don't have insurance coverage for something, or they don't have this other thing. And here's an opportunity for them to be able to get virtually unlimited support, for lots of different things in their life. And whether they attend one group a month or 10 a week, they don't pay anything different. So right. That's I think that's a key thing, is how do we make this as affordable and accessible as possible, that as we continue to grow, we can cover a wider variety of topics, which benefits more members. And as the more members grow, we can continue adding more wider topics and meet the needs both ways.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of it, is that it's, you pay the monthly subscription price or the annual subscription price, and you get access to everything. It's not just like one thing. To me, that's the beauty, because at the end of the day, we don't just go through one thing. We go through like a lot of shit in a day, never mind a month, right? I mean, you just don't know. So the fact that you have all of these resources, at your fingertips, I think is huge. And I think it needs to be blasted out there more. We'll talk about that, because I think you need to get the word out more. But so I think that, the other piece about support is when I think it's easier for people to reach out when it's virtual, because there's not, I think when it's an in-person thing, there's like this vulnerability. And it's easier, you're not a keyboard warrior, right? Because you can see faces and stuff like this, but it's still in a screen.
Yeah.
So they can be more, I think, open. I think it gives people permission, because there are a lot of people that in person, they will not open up.
Yeah, there's a sense of security and safety there. Absolutely. Absolutely. And on the flip side of that too, is that there's some people that are now, especially having been that, are craving in-person services. So we just are in the process of opening our first office.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, in the Atlanta area, and we're going to continue opening offices around the country and around the world. We've got an entire platform in Spanish that's run by. We've got a COO in Spain who's running South American groups and in Latin America and over in Europe. And it's like, there's this hybrid element to where we want to be able to give people options and choices as well. But yes, 100%, you're correct that, it takes a lot less. You can take some of the anxiety out of like, okay, I'm now going to go join this group, and I may not know everybody there right now, or maybe a little bit nervous about joining it. But once you get in, you realize, oh, this is not only is it totally safe, but it's very welcoming and supportive, and beyond that too. I actually had a friend who was going through some stuff, and I told this person multiple times, like, we have a group for that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like one of those, I was like, look, it's not my group. I promise we have a group for that. Just go meet this facilitator. I promise that person is going to help you with what it is that you're needing. And sure enough, I got a text like later that night. It said, my fight or flight system was really kicking in, and it was kind of thing. And then it said, but I feel effing amazing. And yeah. That was exactly what I needed. Thank you. And it's like, yeah, like, I know it can be a little bit nerve-wracking at a time of doing something new or trying to build this new habit of jumping in and doing this instead of scrolling through social media and clicking on memes. And, next thing you know, an hour goes by. That same hour could have been spent enhancing something in your life as opposed to.
I call that doom scrolling, right? When you're looking at all that shit and you're like, and it's, like both sides. I mean,
Sure.
I think last week I was like looking at Twitter, and I had to put my phone down. I was like, this is insane. Because like after a half hour, I was like, how much longer, is it before we get like World War III starts or, whatever. And I started freaking myself out. I was like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm doom scrolling on Twitter. And she's like, look at the slots, you moron. Look at the cats. If you're going to be on Twitter, look at the, dogs, and that other shit. But it pops up in my feed.
Yeah.
And then you don't have, like, if I block something now, it doesn't necessarily block it.
Right. Wow. Okay.
get into that whole thing because I'm like, block this. And then I open it up and there's like this thing and I'm like, block that. Like, why is that on there? So I try to stay off of Twitter. Probably going to shoot myself in the foot right now, but I don't care. I try not to be on social that much. You know, I have to do stuff for certain clients, so I'll do that. But, you know, I like LinkedIn.
Sure.
LinkedIn's my friend. They don't get, some people do get political and then I can step away.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, I'm removing myself. We're not even responding. So that's kind of cool. So, so you're talking about opening locations nationwide, globally. How do you go about that? Like, do you have scouts in states and, you know, scouting out locations? Because I'll help you scout Indiana. There's a lot of people who need this shit here. Let me tell you what. So is that what you do? Or like, how do you choose like what location you're going to open up next?
Yeah, good question. So I do a lot of things based on feel and feedback. And that served me well in the past. And I've learned throughout this time, especially making a lot of mistakes in the past, when to pay attention to things and when not to. And part of that is really learning to, again, hone in on like the feeling and feedback of what's happening. And so I don't have like a predestined next location necessarily. We definitely can do something in New York. We definitely want to do something in Madrid. We definitely want to do something in Nashville and continue out from there. But that's primarily because we also have facilitators in those areas who are already building a presence, even though they're doing so virtually, they're still there physically. And so we have people who are committed, who are on our team, who can help be present in those offices and be part of that community specifically. So part of that is also where we're led. You know, we get more traction with certain organizations as an adjunct to their EAPs, and they have a factory or a big corporate office or some of the kind of business in multiple locations or a specific area. Then sure, we can open up an office, satellite office, just to service people for them if it obviously makes sense, you know, business-wise as well. But we have a lot of flexibility there, and our adaptability to our members' needs is really what the driving impetus is. So as members continue to grow and they go, hey, these are the things that we need, or we really need an in-person thing, or we love that group, but we're in this time zone. Can we have another one in this time instead? The answer is yes, we can do that. And so really that adaptability is key for us.
So if there's like a corporation that, you know, needs, I'm going to put you in touch with Brandy, freaking ant, with Brandy, who, she's the CEO, executive director of Mental Health America here in Lafayette. And we just got I think is it 988?
Yeah. The mental health crisis line?
Yes, 988. Okay, good. Because I screwed it up last time. You know, I think I said 811, and that's the utility thing.
Oh.
That was not what I meant. But yeah, the 988, and they got chosen, Indiana got chosen because of them. So, which I think is really huge. So I may connect the two of you. Because this state and our county, Tippecanoe County, so I run, you know, Unmasking Lafayette. My partner, Michelle, just got her master's in social work, I think. And we're doing like this scholarship for anybody who enters in the mental health arena here. But they have to stay in Tippecanoe County because we are so hurting for mental health professionals here. And the mental health crisis here it's off the hook. I mean, it's just, you know, there's so many people that need support, and there's just not enough people to help them.
Yeah.
So, but one of the things that you were saying earlier was, you know, about having people who not necessarily are in the medical field or, you know, the experience. And I really believe that experience is the greatest teacher, right? And it doesn't make us experts. Just because we went through something doesn't mean that we're an expert. But again, we can impart our wisdom and hope that they, that they listen. And not coming from us. I think that's the other thing um, is when you approach somebody that you know, I think that sometimes there's resistance there because you know them and they don't want to maybe necessarily be vulnerable and open up. I mean, all of my friends, we talk, we just communicate. Like we're like, what's going on? And they're like, nothing. And we get it out of each other and we make each other talk because we're healthy. I mean, we've gone through all the stuff. We've done the work. But for the people that aren't comfortable talking to people that they know, this resource is amazing because it opens up these doors to introducing them to virtual strangers that probably end up, becoming support partners at the end because, they can be vulnerable because there's no like emotional stock there. There's no, if I tell you this, you're going to think different of me.
Right.
Because I think there's a lot of stigma around that.
Yeah. I had somebody yesterday talking about not wanting to go to a local Al-Anon meeting because this was Monday, because the first thing that they thought if they went to that local meeting was that, or they had experienced before, was that somebody else said, I wonder who it is in her family that has an alcohol problem or a drug problem or something like that. And it was like this rumor mill. And, it's a shame that is a real thing that happens. And that's a fear. But at the same time, it plays to the thing that you're talking about too, is that when you're connecting with people who could be anywhere in the world, but are there for the same purpose as you, it's not the same as walking into a room full of people who you might run into every single day in your community. It doesn't mean that also shouldn't be available, because many people are like, well, I'm wide open about this. Everybody already knows about this issue, and that's okay, and that's totally fine. But for others who want more anonymity, then being able to do an online resource where you're connecting with people who likely are not going to be right around the corner from you.
Right. And you can also use you don't have to use your real name. For all intents and purposes, right?
You can use a screen name. Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. You don't have to, nobody else, we have people that are coming from lots of different backgrounds and lots of different reasons and lots of different things. And unless they self-disclose that, nobody else knows that. I could use, a totally different name and log into the thing. And if nobody knows who I am otherwise, they believe that's my name. And that's perfectly okay, because that isn't important and the label's not important. All that's important is the connection and the support.
Right. And the interesting thing is, so I work with some of my clients are coaches, executive coaches, and they can't get testimonials because the people that they're working with don't want anybody knowing that, people are the C-suite of these corporations. They're like, I don't want anybody knowing that. And to me, I'm almost like, that's sad, because I think in my mind, if you came out and were like, yes, I recognized that, I needed help in this area and I reached out to a coach and I got that help, I would have more respect for you than hiding it. Because to me, that means that you're self-aware. You realize that there was an issue that you needed to fix. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but no, they're like, I can't even use Joe H, not me, but my client was like, I can't use Joe. So I said, well, can you do something general? And yes and no, because depending on what you say, people can, kind of put two and two together.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of, because I have no problem, talking about the trauma that I went through and all the work that I had to do to get where I'm at now, because I wasn't always this healthy. Mm-hmm. We could thank our buddy Jeff, because Jeff really gave me my aha moment, and I'll say his name now, I don't care. But, he really, he was like, there was something in your childhood and you handled it a certain way. And that was, and, Jeff, he's so, tender and gentle. And when I realized that, I was like, oh shit. And it literally changed my life. It changed my life because it made everything make sense.
Yeah.
Every good decision, bad decision, all of it. And like, I encourage people, I try telling people there's always one pivotal moment, and it doesn't have to be trauma. Because I had somebody go, well, it does, everyone talks about trauma and not everybody goes through trauma. It doesn't necessarily have to be trauma, but there is one pivotal moment in your childhood that starts the trajectory of your future. I firmly believe it. And it could be negative, positive, whatever, but there's something there. I wish there was a way. So how are you getting the word out now? I mean, like, how are you, how are people hearing about Inovia? How are people, signing up for it and realizing the value that this thing offers? Because this is, when I think about it, like I said, you can go through 10 things in one day and you have everything right there, because you're not just paying for one thing, you're paying for all things in one payment.
Yeah. It's been a lot of different ways, and because we have a lot of different entry points, we have groups that are really designed for certain sets of people. For example, we have people joining for different reasons, and so some of it is through traditional facilities as an aftercare or prevention level. Some of it's coming from, we now have a way to work with primary care physicians, OBGYNs, pediatricians, geriatric doctors, regular family practitioners, where you can actually use your insurance to join our groups through behavioral health integration. And really there's this huge push from both ends of general behavioral health care and general health care, physical health care, coming into the middle and realizing that they are one and the same discussion. They both affect one another. And by addressing mental health and behavioral health as a whole in a way that's supportive and that's going to especially relieve stress, then by relieving stress, the result in your body means better sleep, less cortisol, your hypertension, might go away. So you're not now beyond whatever blood pressure medication or all these different things that can be led back to a bout of trauma, as you mentioned, right? Or just things that are generally causing negative stress in your life, or other things that you're needing help or difficulty with, loss of a loved one or that kind of thing. That you, if you can address these things and reduce anxiety and stress as well, then you're having a much better impact on your overall picture of health. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of ways to assess and monitor that now, and so there's actual billing codes for that, where you can go to your general practitioner and say, hey, I would love to have this ongoing support network. They know how to help set it up to where you can actually make more money in your healthcare practice by connecting up with them, and we get the benefit of it in between. It's like there's a lot of different ways to be able to do that now. So it depends on the avenue that they're coming in, but now that we're also starting with schools, mm-hmm. with parents and that, but also college campuses. We have a whole thing rolling out with colleges and universities now. That it really depends on where it's coming from, and a lot of it is just warm contacts and connections of people who go, hey, this is really a great thing. They've seen it through other behavioral health networks, kind of thing. But really we're beginning that process now. Finally, 1 year in, learning how much we've learned, been able to adapt to the needs of our members. That's growing every month, and be able to continue to provide a better overall service that helps get the word out more.
Right. That's awesome. You should have a podcast, I'm just going to say. I mean, really, if you think about it, what you do is it's so important for the resources to be there for those three buckets.
Yeah.
And I feel like I could just say this like all day long, that even for the mental health professional, they need somebody to talk to.
We've got a therapist support group. We have a support group just for therapists. Yes, we do. And it's well attended. Yeah.
Right? I'm a marketer. I have a fractional CMO because, I'm marketing for my clients. That's what the launch did. I was like, oh shit, who's marketing for me?
Yeah.
Nobody. Well, now I have help with it, but it's like physician heal thyself, right? So I love that you have that. I didn't know that. So yeah, therapists out there, there's a group here for you. I mean, so
coaches too. We have one for coaches as well. We have a coaching like supervision support group also run by certified coaching trainers. So it's like we're really trying to again cover as many entry points as possible, so
right.
that people also find out other areas that they can benefit from and connecting from. And we've got upcoming a lot of things coming up as well, which we're excited about.
I can't wait to hear. I'm going to have you on every few months as this thing grows, because I'm flattered that, you're sponsoring us. I mean, I always say that, but what you do is just so important, and the need, there's such a need out there for all of it, that, one of my next, guests, Tiffany, who I know, was talking to, does aroma. It's like medical aromatherapy. Like, she has a degree in it, and she talks about different different ways to get healthy. And so I know she reached out to you, and I have other people that I talk to, about, I'm like, they have this thing and they're always looking for new, like my mindfulness coach. She's probably going to be reaching out to you. I'm like, they probably have something, but they don't have you. There's something about her that's so different. I sat in, it was so funny. A friend of mine last week was like, hey, so-and-so is doing this mindful thing. And I was like, okay, I'll go and I'll listen. And they did the meditation and they started like talking, and I couldn't stay because it wasn't Diane. I was like, it just didn't feel like, I didn't connect with it. There's something about her that's really cool. So, but I'll connect you guys. So what is it that you want people to know? Like, what are some things that you really want out there, in the public, that people can kind of latch onto? And
I think the biggest thing, and I actually did like a very short video about this the other day, because it had come up in another conversation, is that the assumption that a support group, just by the name of it, is only for people who are struggling or needing help in a time of difficulty. That's not the only thing that we're created for. It's for all these other times. It's for ongoing. It's for working with everyday people to lead happier, healthier lives in whatever that may look like. We have, Dr. Progrellis, who's in our office today. She's a chiropractor, and she's running a group which will be second and fourth Thursdays every month, that talks about basically it's stress hacks. So how do you interpret all the different neurological signals in your body and how they present themselves as stress, and how can you do things to help alleviate that, whether depending on how that presents for you. So there's this whole educational piece that becomes an experiential group that is literally just doing nothing but helping you feel better. And that's why that's our tagline, is feel better, because that's what we're about. And now with some of these partnerships that we have going on, is that we're actually able to start quantifying that through measurements, assessments, and outcomes.
Nice.
We don't ever want to get into the position of collecting personal health information in terms of like a HIPAA compliant covered entity. We can be partners with covered entities that have to do that, and we adhere to their standards for those purposes. But we're not a treatment provider. We're this space in between. But we do have partnerships that are currently already in place, and other ones that are in the works, where we can help people if they're wanting to track the overall health and wellness of their employees, for example. And you want to get a snapshot of that, and they can do, anonymous randomized surveys within there, or assessments within their population of employees, and then have them be directed or recommended to various groups that are going to improve or address those symptoms that come up for them. And then they continue to reassess every month or every quarter, and you track that progress along the way. Then in a very inexpensive manner, you're able to prove not only are you reducing thousands and thousands of dollars per person per year, but you're making them more productive at work. They're showing up better in their relationships at home. They're getting along better, in the boardroom, or all these different scenarios. And that's that compounding effect that happens when people feel better. That radiates into other ways. You're emitting an energy to where you're enhancing your environment. You're not drawing from your environment. And whether you're starting from a point of struggle or starting from a point of exhilaration, there's always room for improvement because there is no end point. There is no, and you can always continue improving. So those are some of the things that we're looking at as we continue to grow. Is not just how do we help people feel better, how do you measure it, how do you continue to improve upon it going forward for lots of different purposes beyond the obvious.
So for any of the business owners listening that have employees, would they reach out to you? How would they, get in touch to be able to provide the service for their employees?
Yeah, you can reach out to me directly, info@inoviabh.com. Otherwise, there's a contact form on there at inoviabh.com. And I'd love to set up a conversation and see how we could best help and support you and your people and be able to document and show how not only how you're going to make your general environment better, but also save a ton of money as a result.
Yeah, and a happy worker, is definitely going to. I just muted myself. Be more productive.
Yes,
they're going to be more. Excited to work. I remember, working for companies and I was miserable. It was either with the company or I was just like miserable on my own. And when I was in those miserable states, I just didn't want to do shit. You don't want to, it's like you have to. So I have to do this and I get it done. But, am I getting it done to my best capacity? Probably not.
Yeah.
When I was happy, you're firing on all cylinders. And so I think it makes a whole difference.
Yeah, think about how many, this happens to all of us throughout life, but how many times people come into work and they're still thinking about the fight they had with, their significant other, or they're worried about these financial difficulties or some other problem that they've had, or they're worried about their children, or they're worried about this thing, or they're not feeling good, they're really anxious, and they go in their office and close the door and don't talk to anybody, or all these things that are in the past that are bothering them in the past, as in just minutes ago or hours ago or days ago, right. But that they're carrying with them forward into what would be otherwise a productive work environment. Or if they're having, because they do have a high level of anxiety, that they're self-medicating, covered up with, high alcohol use or, other substances. And so they're showing up in an incapacitated way at work. Well, what if you can relieve some of those things to where they don't feel the need to then self-medicate? And so there's lots of different ways that we can help people show up better at work in that way. Even from like a relapse prevention standpoint, if you want to talk about substances, a lot of recovery programs end talking about substances, but what about the rest of the lives that could be triggers for their relapse? Well, we have solutions for that so that they can deal with those triggering situations in a much smoother manner.
And you talk about in the workplace. What about the remote workers that can drink all day? Do you know what I mean? Because they're not in the office. Nobody knows what they're doing. So, and that could be anyone. I know, God, during COVID, I remember there was one person I used to be in touch with. I'm not anymore, but she would start drinking like 9 o'clock in the freaking morning. But like we would have a conversation at noon, and she was just like gone. And I'm like, how are you? And she was an entrepreneur. I'm like, how are you running your business? Like, how the hell are you? I'm functioning. Like, she knew she was an alcoholic. She was like, I'm functioning. I can't handle this shit. I can't handle this, alone stuff. Yeah. And then after a while, I just kind of, I removed myself because I didn't want to. When I was younger, a lot younger, a woman I know committed suicide the one night that I wasn't there for her. Mm. She would always call me. I would always show up. And the one night, she called, and I had an interview the next morning, and I was like, I can't. I was like, this is important to me. You're important to me. Just do me a favor, make it through this one night. I'll be there in the morning. We'll talk. We'll work it out. And I went on my interview and didn't hear from her. And then I called somebody that we knew. They didn't hear from her. They called her mother and she killed herself. And then I was in therapy for like 3 years after that because I was like, oh my God, I killed her. Like if I would have gone, and I know now that it wasn't my fault, but that was one of the traumas that I carried for a long time. And then I literally, it was so weird. It was like when this was going on, I was like, no. And I removed myself from the situation because I didn't want to put myself in that situation again.
Yeah.
And it was one of those self-preserving kind of things.
Sure. Yeah. So, yeah. That just totally reminded me of, one of the things that came about for this, and like in our adolescent platform, we have a bullying and cyberbullying support group.
That is awesome.
And how many kids have harmed themselves, and potentially to taking their own lives to that point because of these situations. And somebody who I had grown up with, and for a long time after he wound up doing it in school, in class. And for many, many years, it haunted me in a different level to where it wasn't someone I was close to, but it was somebody as being someone who feels deeply for other people. I felt like there was something I could have done throughout all those years to support this person, to let him know that he's not alone, that he doesn't have to do all this by himself, and that people do care about him and things like that. And that was a piece of at least witness trauma that that I don't want anybody else to have to experience. And so it's like, how can we do to the best of what we can without totally internalizing everything? Because any level of empathy can get magnified to the point where, like you say, you then take it on as your thing, and it's too much. But there's something that can be done in between of how do we either point someone to a resource or just have a simple conversation or let them know that there's these other things available or that kind of thing. And it was sort of like after having gone through a different type of bullying situation myself as an adult, and then being like, wow, I now really understand what it feels like to be completely alone and like nobody's on your side or on your team.
Wow.
And knowing that there's a way around that. And the thing at the time that helped me with the most were other people that I wound up finding who had been in a similar situation. And so if I were to really draw the idea back for Inovia before then, it's not like it's support groups or some novel approach, but there isn't anybody who's trying to go as wide as we are for as many different areas and as many different types of support as we are, because we really do want to be a resource for people of any type of background eventually, and any type of language eventually, and any type of thing, to where they feel like they have a place they belong, because belonging is key.
And there are online translators. Mm-hmm. So if you're speaking one language and they're of a different country or whatever, they can put their translator on and it will translate the conversation for them.
Yeah.
So they'll understand. They may not be able to participate per se, or maybe they can if there's a translator on the other end. I don't know how that works, but I know that they do have translators, because I thought that I actually found one. I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. So yeah. I was looking at this thing in French, mm-hmm. and they didn't have the option for English subtitles, but there was this translator. So I went, all right, I downloaded the translator and I can watch anything now.
Wow.
So yeah. So it's pretty cool. There's so much technology out there now. It's just, which is why I think this is so timely, because we do have the technology, and COVID did make everything very local. Like you could be in, Lisbon right now or wherever, and we'd be having the same conversation because it's the internet. That's it.
Right. Yeah, and we do. I think we have facilitators in 4 continents, and I think 8 different countries so far already. So the furthest away is South Africa, and we've got some pending from other spots. So it's like there's we've got Bosnia and Spain, as I mentioned, and certainly South America and Central America and U.S. and Canada. but that is the thing, that how do we take this community and remove the distance from it, to where it doesn't matter where they're joining from.
And one of the things that I should have asked, like first, are there LGBTQIA groups and communities that they have outreach for as well, or?
Yes, so we keep looking to add that. Just to be 100% honest, we talked about this a little bit last time. Mm-hmm. I lined up another person, and this is. I live in the South, and there's been some really really terrible things that various states and political things that have been going on, and that has made some people that I know that work in this space that want to run support groups actually afraid to do so because of ridicule, which was really frustrating.
Wow.
Not for our purposes in terms of frustrating, but frustrating that why is there this environment where they feel unsafe to be able to do that. So we're still working on that. Another issue we had is that some of them were therapists, and the type of therapist that they were and the type of group that they wanted to run required specific licensing laws, and that is another issue with reciprocity, since we're not offering therapy, but sometimes the groups can get more of like a therapeutic process group or therapy process group, mm-hmm. in which case it is subject to licensing laws. So we're really working on that, and it shouldn't be this difficult. So if there is anybody watching that would love to operate a peer support group, because that's really what it's for, it's a peer support group, mm-hmm. Then please, I want to talk to you.
And I may know a couple of people here that actually might be good candidates. So I may send them your way too, because it's important, especially with these laws that are coming out. Don't say gay. And if it's a transsexual kid, or a kid that's trying to transition, now they can't get the medication that they need. And if they've already started, they're screwed. They can't get the medical help that they need. They can't get the mental health that they need. There's like so many negatives out there. I did a thing last week on LinkedIn. We did a Hogwarts, I think it was like a marketing strategy smackdown, and one representative of each of the Hogwarts houses, mm-hmm. Were like coming up with these different marketing strategies, and all of the proceeds, there was like a QR code that people could scan, and all the proceeds went to I'm going to forget the name of it. That sucks, but it's the Transgender Law Center, I think. Okay. Because, LGBTQIA, there's so many issues with that as well. But these Don't Say Gay laws are just so harmful, because if a kid is trans and he doesn't have a safe home, the teacher has to tell the parents. So that puts the kid in danger right away. And then it also makes people hide if they are feeling, whatever, because they don't want to, and then they can't live authentically. And I think everybody, and it's not just because I'm gay, I'm not trans, but, I'm human, and I believe in human rights. And I just think that everybody should be able to live authentically. I don't care who they are. Yeah. So I'm going to see who I can put you in touch with for that. And that should have been one of the first things I said, because I was thinking about it before we got on, and then we started talking about all the other stuff. But so we're at 1 hour and 6. It goes by so fast. And I know we didn't talk a lot about entrepreneurship today. We kind of touched on it a little bit, but I really think that it's important that this platform gets out there. And it's not just because they're my sponsor. That just was happenstance. This is a really important platform, because there's so many things. And, like Luke said, it's not just about mental health. You could be having a great day, and then you could have people to share your great day with, right? I mean, it doesn't all have to be negative. Yeah. But it's this platform that you pay one monthly fee, or you pay for it annually, and you have access to all the programs, not just one, all of them. And if you use the code Cookbook 20, you get 20% off of whichever subscription you choose. So I want to say thank you for spending time with us again today. Hang on, if Kofi is there. Kofi, are you there? I think his power went out. So this is going to be interesting. Kofi. Okay, he didn't. All right. I guess your power is back. So this has been a weird week. So this is like 4th of July week, and I'm going to air this probably in 2 weeks. But with the holiday in like on the second day of the week, people took like Monday off, and then they didn't take Wednesday off, or they didn't take Monday off, and then it's just been like a crazy ass week.
Yes.
And energetically as well. The energy has just been so weird this week. It's right. It's like, nobody knows what day it is. Everybody's like lost. So it's just, but hang on, I'm going to say goodbye and come back. So I know that there wasn't a lot of entrepreneur speak this time around. But one of the things that are really near and dear to my heart is mental health. And to have a platform like this that is for not just mental health, but for everything. It's like anything that you can think of, there is a class here, and it's AnoviaBH.com. Go to AnoviaBH.com/subscribe, put in the promo code Cookbook20, and you'll get 20% off of your subscription. And there's so many programs on here, and they're adding more and more. And for the LGBTQIA community, I'm going to make sure that he gets somebody on there. I'm going to start reaching out because obviously that's important, especially with all these anti-gay laws coming out. But once again, thank you so much for hanging in for, an hour plus and listening to this, even though it really wasn't a lot about entrepreneurship. A little bit we threw in there, but I want to thank you. I appreciate you all. Thank you for the emails. I got a really cool email last week about the evolution of this podcast. So that was really cool. So thank you so much for that. And subscribe. When you subscribe, you get notification of the next, whatever the next episode is going to be. Share it. If you've gleaned any nuggets from here, share it with people. The more you share, the more you like, the more you subscribe, the more downloads we get. I think we're at like 2,900 downloads now or something like that. So keep downloading because then that helps us. But again, thank you. I appreciate you all. And until next time, go out and find what lights your fire. See ya.